I think the problem I have is, for me, it's not a job. For me, it's a passion. I think if I'd had to die to make this film, I would have done it. You know, if someone had said to me, you can have the film completed, but you die, or you can not have the complete film completed and you live, I would have, without thinking, taken the die option, because I can only make a film by putting everything I have into it.
That sounds extreme, but all I can say to you, Billy, is that I believe Paul. When he says that, I believe him.
Hey everyone, I'm Billy and welcome back to Half the Picture. I'm very excited to say that our guests this episode are actor Marc Warren and director Paul Hills, who came on the show to talk about their film Boston Kickout, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. So Boston Kickout is this cult British coming-of-age film from 1995. It's based on Paul Hill's own childhood, and he says it was inspired by his childhood growing up in Stevenage, and it's got a great soundtrack, you know, loads of great Brit-pop artists like Oasis, and obviously people like Primal Scream as well, and the cast is amazing. You know, it's Marc Warren, as I say, but it's also John Simm in his first film, and Andrew Lincoln as well in his first film, who obviously has gone on to do The Walking Dead. So it was a lot of fun chatting to Marc and Paul, both about the film. So Marc Warren's an amazing British actor. I mean, I've been a fan of him since I was a kid when I first saw him in Doctor Who, and he's done so much amazing work across the years. Projects like Mad Dogs and Band of Brothers, of course. You know, he's been fingers in all sorts of different pies. He's been around for a long time. And Paul Hills as well is such an interesting director. It was such a pleasure to have them both on the pod. So without further ado, let's roll on my chat with Marc Warren and Paul Hills. Enjoy.
So you guys doing all right?
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
I like your hair, Billy.
Oh, thank you very much. I like that.
And I like your office. Is that your office, Billy?
Yeah, it's the office of the podcast. It's Half the Picture offices we got back here. So got a bit of Gilbert and George back there. We've got a few bits on the back. So
It's very roomy.
Are you at East London?
yeah, I'm in Brick Lane. This is where we're based.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. That's why you got the Gilbert and George. So.
Yeah, they're just down the road. They have their offices pretty close as well. So yeah, very exciting. Great. So yeah, I'm very happy to have you guys on the pod. I've been a fan of both of you guys for a long time. Going back to when I was a kid. I mean, your work, Marc, obviously, and things like Band of Brothers and Doctor Who, obviously, and obviously your films as well, Paul. So it's a real pleasure to have you guys both on Half the Picture.
No pops.
Before we start. So, well, I guess let's just go right into it then. So this year is the 30th anniversary of your film, Boston Kickout, Paul, and obviously you as well, Marc. It was your first film. You've got the 4K remaster of it coming out. It's playing on Monday at House Central. You guys have got the cast back together, yourself, Marc, and obviously Andrew as well, and John Simm, and, you've got the main cast back together. As a kickoff, I just wanted to ask, what's it been like revisiting the film for you both personally? I mean, after all this time, after 30 years.
Well, for me, it's been a 2-year journey doing the restoration, but a 5-year journey since I decided that I would do the restoration. I went back to the original negative. I took it out of storage. I had it rescanned and then regraded. And I basically went through every frame of the film, 151,200 frames, and cleaned every one of them. I wouldn't say by hand because it's a digital thing you're doing, but digitally we cleaned every frame, restored the scratches, the neg damage, the white sparkle, the watermarks, the cinch marks. We cleaned it up, and it now is the most immaculate version of the film that has ever existed. We also cleaned up the sound. We took out some dropouts and we remastered the sound. It's been a real labor of love, and it's been 2 years. What's it been like? Well, it's strange. I hadn't seen the film for 29 years before I started, 28 years before I started doing the restoration. So it was an amazing experience to relive all the things which had happened while shooting the different scenes, and to re-experience it. Now I've seen it a million times again. I'm also sick of it again in a way. But, and I'm not sure if I'll even be able to watch it at the anniversary screening on Monday at the Central Picture House. But maybe I will. Okay, maybe I will. That's how it's been for me. And it was great doing the new revised director's commentary The original director's commentary was done with John Simm on the original Columbia TriStar release, but Mark and I did a director's commentary earlier in the year for this 4K release, and that was an amazing experience.
I'm not sure we watched much of the film, did we, Paul? They started recording, and Paul and I just, because we've had a 30-year friendship since this, like, you know, but great friends, best friends, and so we were off to the races really in that commentary. It's amazing looking back, Billy, after 30 years, and just seeing how young we were, you know, and young and stupid, really, you know, just crazy, very passionate, and you know, heads full of dreams. But if I think back to what I remember of this, you know, I don't all that time ago, I don't remember getting a script. I don't remember anything about it apart from sitting in front of Paul in Wardour Street in Soho, and as soon as I looked at him, I felt like fireworks were going off, and I pretty much, I don't think that's ever really changed, really, when I've looked at Paul. There's something about him, and certainly when him and I get together, I mean, it's completely going on from what anybody else thinks about it. I have no idea, but we've always had that kind of relationship. And to me, it was an access into somewhere that I really wanted to go as a young actor, you know. And I saw this guy, and I thought, okay, this is I could go somewhere with this, you know. You're sort of trying to learn what you're doing, you know. You're doing rep jobs in theatre around the country, and then suddenly you meet a guy like this who's kind of very passionate, very fearless, and he cast me in this part, and then he told me to cut all my hair off, and you know, and when I did that, that was kind of it, really. That I felt different, you know. I looked different. People reacted to me differently. Yeah, and the rest is, you know, in the film. But
well, I was hoping to actually, spotlight your character for a bit, your character of Robert, Mark, because watching film back, it's interesting because so you've done theatre and television, but this is your film debut.
I had done, well, Paul reminded me, I think I'd been in the film Shine, and I think I'd done a film called Bee Monkey, but certainly nothing like this, no.
On this level, yeah. And your character, the character of Robert that you play, is this sort of incredibly volatile, you know, essentially, you know, skinhead character in many ways. Kind of, for me, you reminded me a lot of ways of Gary Oldman is in Meantime, you know, that sort of coxy, that kind of sort of very volatile, aggressive, negative, you know, character. But it's in many ways, it's quite a challenging character to portray, because obviously not only for the violence and the aggression, but the fact that you kind of have to hijack the audience's attention, and as well as obviously the characters around you, like John, and you know, you have to hijack the movie, sort of every single scene that you're in. You kind of come in there quite bullishly, and then you hijack it, and then sort of you leave again, then come back. And I was wondering, as I was watching it, how challenging a role this was for you, especially as I say, it's quite early in your career. You know, you have to sort of basically hijack the movie whenever you're on screen. Did you find that challenging?
No, I didn't. I don't think, because it was obviously just the right time for me, and it was the right environment. I was working with the right actors and certainly the right director. So I don't know, that was kind of very easy to do that. And Paul just gave me a liberty to basically do whatever I wanted to do. And so it felt incredibly creative in that sense. And yeah, you kind of just trying to nick every scene you're in, basically. I've always tried to do that anyway, especially if you're not in the lead. You just, you know, John's the lead in it. You come along, you just try and nick a bit. What the bit that I found challenging was when the film finished, because I'd never experienced this before. But when the film finished, and I've never had it since, I found it very difficult to get out of that. I did struggle with that. Yeah.
I think my approach was very methodological. You know, I loved, you know, the films of Brando and Montgomery Clift. For me, I wanted to create an environment where everyone could become the character. So with Mark, that's a very special thing, because the character of Rob is a bit of a nutter, really. Okay. And there are these people in the new town of Stevenage, where I grew up, who love to dominate the surroundings and, you know, put across a version of themselves where they are a very important person, where they kind of, hold the strings of everything that's going on in their manner. And the character Rob aspires to be one of these people, The thing is, he's not very good at being a nutter. You know what I mean? He wants to be a really good nutter, but actually he's nowhere near as smart as he thinks he is, which is the problem. But he has an entourage. He has Brad, and he wants to have Phil in the entourage, but Phil doesn't really sit well within it. He's got Mandy as well. So with Mark still in the scenes, I'm very happy with him still in the scenes, because these characters love to steal the scenes. They want to come into a room and be the center of attention. We played it out like that, and it worked wonderfully, I think.
No, I agree. It does. And you mentioned something there, Paul, about how you grew up in Stevenage and how, you were very familiar, with that environment. It was kind of in the DNA as you were making into the film and writing the film. Was this film at all inspired by your childhood and adolescence?
Very, very much so. It's very autobiographical. Okay. All the characters in it are composites of people I knew when I was growing up. It's very much about my own experience. I loved Truffaut's film 400 Blows. And this is a film which I watched at a very young age. And so with the arrogance of youth, I thought I would make my own film about growing up. What happens to Phil and to the young lads mirrors exactly what happened to me after that first summer after I left school, and, what I'm going to do with my life. In the film, Phil eventually chooses to pursue a career of photography. I obviously had at that time made the decision to pursue a career in filmmaking. So the mirror is there, and I also wanted to hold that mirror up to what was happening in my hometown, because my hometown of Stevenage is a very peculiar place, an English new town, which is created by an act of government. People are transplanted wholesale from the slums of London into a concrete jungle in the hope of a new life. But none of the facilities and amenities and things which you would probably want to have, in a new society, in a new town, were in place. So people were bored, and they got into alcoholism and drug addiction and violence, and all these things played out. In fact, the problems of the inner city slums were actually just transposed to the idyllic concrete new towns of the 50s and 60s. And this film is my experience of what it was like in the 90s. We shot it in 94, but strangely, I set it in 92, so that I could have the music of that kind of era, and I could put it more contemporary with my own experience of growing up. I actually started writing this script when I was 19, the year after the film is set, and I finished the script when I was 22. So it's very autobiographical.
Yeah, and you've got all that stuff in the background, the geopolitical situation with the Berlin Wall and that whole period. Yeah, it captures the time very well. It's a very interesting snapshot. And as you say, one of the things that struck me watching it was how honest a portrait is of that, of Stevenage at that time. It was kind of almost a love letter as much as it is, it's a love-hate letter in many ways, I found. And am I right in thinking that Stevenage, they weren't too sure how they felt about the film? Because am I right, is that thinking that had the premiere there, the premiere was going to be there, and then they were like, I don't know if we want to host it here because of the way it's portrayed in the film. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a running battle with the local council. Even though they gave us permission to film, when we turn up at locations, they would clean the locations. So we would choose a location which would have graffiti on the wall, and when we turn up, the graffiti wasn't there. We choose a location which had upturned supermarket trolleys in the town fountain, but when we turned up, they had disappeared. They would basically be trying to clean ahead of when we filmed to present an idyllic view of Stevenage. But I was making a film, warts and all, showing exactly what it was like for me and for other people growing up in that city. So that was a running battle. And in fact, about 5 years after we made the film, they did a mural, on the wall of famous people from Stevenage or creative people from Stevenage. and they made sure that I was not in that mural.
Oh, so they took it personally then.
Yeah. And instead of putting me, they put a guy who'd done one short film on the wall.
Well, what they like. Because I guess Stevenage is not an area, there's always talk about, what areas of the UK are presented on film, are seen on film. And I guess Stevenage is not one of those areas. So that is, it's a shame because I guess it is like I say, it's a warts and all love letter to the town. So
It exactly is. And I just wanted to make a truthful film about what it's like to grow up in an English new town. And I don't know if anyone's done a film in such a milieu again since, There were two films which were made in Stevenage before we made Boston Kickout. There was a film called Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush, and little known, there was a film called On a Serious Charge starring Cliff Richard. Both of those films are in the sound clips of when Phil flicks through the TV. He flicks coincidentally through those two films. So you've got a small Easter egg, as people would call it now, of a sound clip of those films.
You have to pay copyright for that.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, one of them was copyright in the USA, and it took ages to get the copyright for, But luckily, as the film was made with no money, it took us a good while to finish the film. So we had a lot of time to pursue all these issues.
And going back to you, Mark, for a second, because as you said earlier, you guys have, you've worked with Paul since Boston Kickout. You guys made Do Elephants Pray together. I mean, you guys clearly enjoy working together and get on. And I mean, do you think on Boston Kickout, the shorthand you guys formed on that film carried through, through the years? I mean, you say you've stayed in touch, and it appears to me you guys have got a shorthand when working together. Do you think that was formed on Boston Kickout?
Yeah, I think that was formed literally the moment we met. It never changed, and we've been, the best of friends for 30 years. It's more than just a working relationship. I would put our friendship. There's our friendship, and then there's our working relationship. But no, it forged a lot of things, and it's also the start. Not only was it the start of my friendship and working relationship with Paul, but also with John Simm, who I went on to do State of Play with, and I did a bit in Life on Mars, and we did 4 series of Mad Dogs, and a friendship with Andy Lincoln, so it was an incredible thing, this group of 20 somethings, very passionate, kind of doing their first film experience, then going to the festivals afterwards, and you can imagine like the chaos of that, these just young, crazy, idealistic guys. So yeah, no, it was an incredible experience. Yeah.
I like to work very, very closely with the actors. I think it's really important. If I'm on a film set with Mark, we're doing a film scene together, I can just look at him and I know what he's thinking, and he can look at me and he knows what I'm thinking. It's amazing just how easy it is for us to work together. It is really easy. I think that what I've experienced since then, because I also work on a lot of other people's films, is I'm very surprised when the director doesn't have that kind of, intravenous connection with the actors which are in front of the camera. But some don't. Some just sit by the monitor and, just are removed from what actually is happening in front of the camera. That's amazing to me. I actually like to stand right by the camera and, be there for the actors if they need me, any opportunity.
It's a visceral experience working for Paul. It certainly was on this film. I mean, you couldn't do that on every job. You'd be absolutely exhausted. But we were young, and you do it. Normally a job is a job. You just go to work and you do what you do. But occasionally you get films like this where it goes beyond.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it echoes in every scene. It echoes at the rap party and everything else beyond it. We were young and crazy. So
yeah, I think the problem I have is, for me, it's not a job. For me, it's a passion. I think if I'd had to die to make this film, I would have done it. If someone had said to me, you can have the film completed, but you die, or you can not have the complete film completed and you live, I would have, without thinking, taken the die option, because I can only make a film by putting everything I have into it.
That sounds extreme, but all I can say to you, Billy, is that I believe Paul. When he says that, I believe him.
Yeah, and it's a problem, I know, because not everyone else is as crazy as I am, you know?
Aye. Well, I mean, that's it, isn't it? If you live and breathe film there, that's how how you got to be, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting what you said there, Paul, about how, when you're directing, especially when directing Marc or directing other actors, you're right by the camera, you're in the scene with them. And it's interesting to hear, different directors, as you say, different directors have a very different approaches. There's a quote from Paul Giamatti, it's obviously incredible actor. He was talking about how when he was working with some directors, they're way off in Video Village, out in a different room, a different part of the set, and it's completely removed. And then you'll get people like, he was talking about Alexander Payne specifically, and how he's right in there in the scene with him and with the other actors, and that is so much more immediate. So it's interesting to say that is the kind of relationship you guys have. Yeah. It kind of builds trust, I guess. It builds more trust.
It builds trust. They know that I'm there for them, and that any question, any concern that they have, I'm there to help them. If you're sitting in Video Village a mile away, then you're basically saying, you get on with the acting, I'll get on with the directing. For me, I'm always schooled in the great director is the director who is in control of the camera, in control of the visuals, and in control of the camera is being pointed at. And what the camera's been pointed at is the actors, and it is the actors that tell the story. And the story is the thing that people get emotionally moved by in a film. It doesn't matter how beautiful the compositions are, the lighting is. It's the story that comes from the actor's performance, which is the most important thing in a film. The most important thing.
Yeah. It's funny, that thing, as you're talking about that, the director at the monitor or the director by the camera, because the one thing you can't do as an actor, you can't see the image, you can't see it, and there's two people who have got great privilege of that, the cameraman and the director watching the monitor. And I do want to know what you're seeing, and if you're seeing something that works, then tell me to do more of that, and if you're seeing something that doesn't work, let's elbow that bit. I do kind of want to know that. Yeah. And I mean, it'd be easy if Paul was at the monitor, because you can feel him anyway. I know he's there, and I know he's completely invested in it. So, yeah.
I mean, the lucky thing is, what you can get on a camera, is you can get a little mini monitor. What I like is to have a little mini monitor on the camera. Now, if it's a huge wide shot of cars chasing down the street, there's no point being by the camera, because you might as well be at the main monitor. But if it's something intimate, you want to be seeing the actual image and what's happening on set simultaneously, and you can look between the two. An interesting story I learned is that Ken Loach closes his eyes whenever a take is being done, because he believes, or believed, because he's made his last film, that if it sounds right, it is right, and he doesn't even want to look at either one, neither the monitor nor what is actually happening live. That's extraordinary. But again, that kind of proves there are many different ways of doing something. But for me, I don't want to be a mile away,
No, and I can't remember if you actually did this, but I would also expect to be doing a scene and Paul just to be shouting stuff, saying, "Do this, or do that," and because I'm always a great fan of doing it many, many times, because it's just a jigsaw, isn't it? You just do it loads of times and you just cut out what you want. And so if you got somebody there feeding you in, I think that really works. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly a great instance of where it's important to have the director right by the camera, because they can go, okay, let's just do that bit again, and then do a perfection upon what is needed, and it could be something technical that needs to be adjusted for focus or positioning or framing or whatever,
And speaking of the technical theme, because as I was watching the film back, there are many scenes like that where you're watching, you're thinking, how you guys set this up, how it was played, how it was rehearsed. I mean, a specific instance of that for me is like when you guys, I think the first main club scene in the film where you've got, Primal Screams loaded playing in the background, great song, obviously, you've got that in the background, but then it's, it's you, Mark, and it's John, and it's the other guys, and you're all going into the club. It's kind of a little, tracking shot in, and like, you've got all these extras, all these background actors, in the club. I was just wondering, like, do you guys remember the experience of like everything you've just talked about, how technical it can be, but also how it has to be kind of spontaneous and immediate? Like, what was the experience like, shooting that scene specifically? If you guys,
well, that scene is a scene that I remember so vividly because it was an enormous scene. It just sat in the schedule as this huge mountain that we were approaching because we had to shoot it on one day. We didn't pay the extras, so we can only get the extras really for that one day. It's a 7.5 minute scene. It has 43 setups in it. And to achieve 43 setups, 7.5 minutes with 200 extras in one day, it takes a monumental amount of willpower because normally a setup takes 20 or 30 minutes, and as setup as complicated as that one going into the club, for instance, should take much longer than 20 or 30 minutes. So I shortlisted the film very stringently with Roger Benici, my DOP. We kept to the shot list very much in that scene, just to make sure that we could get through it. And it was just very much a case of having two cameras and leapfrogging one, so it was being set up while we're shooting on another and shooting the scene totally chronologically, and to keep the enthusiasm going through the beginning and to it's in 3 parts as well. There's the walk in, there's the mid part with what's called the cheerleader colloquially, and then there's the end part with ending in the fight. It was very tough to do that. It was one of the toughest days on the film, but everyone was up for it. Everyone was up for it. Or the cast and the crew were definitely up for it. What do you remember about that day?
I remember it being a great experience because, I mean, basically, if you're going handheld up some stairs with you're being filmed. Well, for a start off, you're making a film. And they're filming you, and you're coming up the stairs, and Primal Scream's playing. Just what is it you want to do? And then you walk through a door, and this soundtrack's going, and there's 200 extras. You're on. I mean, that you don't get that very often. That's a great experience. So we would have been buzzing every single take of that. I mean, normally what happens is you come in, and then you drop the sound so you can get the clean dialogue and whatever. But it's great when you start with your music. So I remember that, and then of course I remember the fight at the end. I'm not going to go too much into that, but that got a little bit controversial, shall we say? And me and the guy within it sort of got into a little bit of fisticuffs. But yeah, so that was an interesting experience, but joyous, I mean, it's got everything you kind of dreamed for, especially as a young actor. It's like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, cinema verite, I guess.
We committed to that song, the Primal Scream song, before, so we were able to play it back, for the first part of that scene. The fisticuff scene at the end, we actually discuss in the director's commentary for the 30K edition of the film, because the 30th anniversary 4K edition will have the original director's commentary with John Simm and the new updated director's commentary with Marc on it, so people could choose between the two. It was an amazing day.
Yeah, no, and you can feel that energy on the screen. It's palpable, and I mean, and you mentioned John there. I mean, of course, as we say, this is one of your first films, Marc, and I believe it was John's first film, and Andrew's first film. So you've got all the spirit, and the spirit of the film. I think also from you, Paul, is youthful. It's absolutely youthful. It's a great sort of time capsule of that time and the energy, but also the youthfulness of the cast and the crew. So I guess for both of you, like working with John and obviously Andrew and the rest of the cast, who were sort of starting out. Like, were there sort of any, like, what kind of memorable memories, like your sort of memorable stories you have from this set working with those guys? And I guess also, like, because we talked about how difficult that scene was to get, like, what were the scenes that I guess stick out for you as like, or the days on the shoot that stick out for you the most as like the most joyous days, like the best days that you guys had?
Well, achieving that day, the nightclub scene was joyous because it really was. I was possessed that day. I mean, I had a plan of 43 setups to do in 10, 12 hours, and I was like a demon possessed, literally in overdrive of where every setup needed to be, what needed to happen. And in a way, I always try and make the camera as invisible to the actors as possible, even though they're, a good actor is always going to have a kind of innate understanding of where the camera is and, what it's going to be shooting. I think I remember the first day very vividly. And the first day, the 17th of September, 94, was also Mark's first day when he pulls up at the gates of the school. That was our first day. And I remember it took a lot of time to, get to the point of actually being able to shoot the film and to get to the moment to realize your dreams of making a feature film autobiographically about your own life. But one of the things that happened is we're in the middle of shooting it with the students, and suddenly the headmaster of the school pulls up and he says to the first AD, Chris Cohen, "In my office now." Well, he went to the office and I carried on shooting, I
just rounding off the set, and then you just right, let's just carry on. Let's just plow on.
Yeah, just carry on. And then also another incident is when we were shooting in the market stalls with Emma McCourt's first scene, and many of the traders in the market complained about us, and the manager of the market traders came and tried to stop us filming. This is in the documentary, which is also going to be on the 4K and Blu-ray limited edition release. And he just interposed himself, and John Simm, said something to him that he didn't like. And there was a huge kerfuffle where he tried to, stop the filming. Those two things spring into my mind as anecdotes about the shooting. Mark?
I think the thing I remember the most would be the two-hander scenes with John. So it'd be the scene where I pull a gun in the car, and I think I put the gun to my head. The traveling scenes in the Capri, two-handers, me and John. When we go around to see my girlfriend Mandy, I just remember all that. Yeah, and I've always loved working with John, and there's always been, he's a fantastic actor. There's always been an intensity with him, but with us working together, and the low point would be doing the stock car race, because at this point I'd been driving a Capri, which I think is a front wheel drive car, throughout the whole of the film, and driving it very well, sort of stopping it on a sixpence, doing all sorts of stuff, just driving it myself, and everybody was very confident in my driving, but they put me in a stock car that had a rear wheel thing. And I had Paul in the car and $100,000 camera, and Paul said to me, "Whatever you do, don't crash the car." And I took off, as you do as a 20-something lunatic, and I put it straight into the wall, and the camera went straight between us. Luckily, didn't hit either of us. That dented my pride, yeah. And
and then all the crew ran across. It was like there'd been an aircraft crash, and they were running to the scene of the crash to see if anyone had survived.
Wow. And I'm assuming, camera okay, Mark, obviously you okay? Unscathed.
The matte box at the front of it was damaged, but because the ratchet straps had been sheared off completely. And
did I have a crash helmet on?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I think I did too, actually. So even if it hit us at a bleak angle,
moderately, yeah, you wouldn't want to be hit by that camera for sure.
No, it was, it was going at quite a pace when it flew off the front of the car.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I can feel it now. Just going in like, oh my.
Me
God.
too.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it vividly. Yeah.
I mean, I had to be the one in the camera turning on and off the camera because no one was insured, and you know, it wouldn't be so bad if I was the one that died rather than a crew member.
Dying for the film, literally dying for the film. I mean, that reminds me of what William Friedkin said when he was doing The French Connection. Like, you know, he was the one operating the camera behind Gene Hackman in the car chase because the cameramen both had families. So he was like, right, okay, I'll do it. I'll operate it, you know.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Risking your life for the film, yeah. I mean, because it's interesting about that scene in the car race scene, and also, you know, some of the other scenes with you, Mark, because they had a great sense of sort of spontaneity about them. Like, yeah, and the feel of the film is very spontaneous. Like a lot of the camera work is obviously handheld, and it's kind of, you know, it's alive, it's kind of electric. Was anything kind of improvised, or was it all kind of adhered fairly?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, my thing, which I think I started on Boston Kickout, is I get the script, and then I go, fuck the script. Now let's make the film, you know? So there was a lot that was improvised, you know? And Mark is a wonderful improviser. I mean, fun out of every club in Stevenage, there's only 2. That's Mark.
Really, did you improvise that line, Mark?
I didn't even remember that. I remember improvising all the time, yeah. And because Paul gave me the license to do that, so I just did it, yeah. Listen, we were in a little creative streak, you know. They don't come along very often, but the creativity was flowing, and we all just went with it. Yeah, I mean, you don't get that liberty to just be improvising on normal jobs, you know. But and you always get a bit of magic when you improvise, providing you say something good. But because it's fresh, you know. You've never said it before, so it normally works.
Yeah, I mean, I would say all the best lines in the film are improvised. I'd be very surprised if I went back and looked at the shooting copy of the film, if that wasn't the case. I'd be very surprised.
And I guess those lessons that you guys are talking about, sort of, I guess the importance of sort of spontaneity and kind of and energy and passion. I mean, but how much of that do you think has sort of informed your work since both of you, like since Boston Kickout? Like, how many lessons do you think you guys learned that you then took with you onto later projects and even onto the project, you know, Do Elephants Pray that you guys did, and, you know, later down the line?
Well, let me answer first. I actually made a film after that called The Poet, and I didn't embrace improvisation as much as I would normally do on that film. And the film suffered, I think, because of it. So I learned a lesson when I made The Poet. I said, never again am I going to make a film which doesn't have wholesale improvisations in it. And then when we made Do Elephants Pray together, then boom, we're back to wholesale improvisations. And I don't think I'd ever make a film not like that again. Mark.
Yeah. Well, for me, the lessons the scene in the car with the gun, where I think I mentioned it earlier. I think I get it from John, the footwell in John's feet, and then I put it up to my head. That was, I don't know, that was a special moment for me. See, I don't know, kind of released something in me as an actor. And maybe I was just I just was not as self-conscious as I'd been before. So that I found that very freeing. And I kind of thought, oh, maybe I've got a few more gears than I thought that I had, you know, and there was an opportunity to expand. So that was a very special moment for me. And the other thing I sort of learned on this film was never give the performance in the rehearsal. Wait till there's some film in the camera, because I remember doing the scene with John. I think it's when I've broken my leg, and I remember rehearsing it. I did the perfect performance in the rehearsal, and everybody was very happy with it. And I never got it again when we filmed it. In my mind, and that's where I learned. Wait till you're doing it. Nobody ever sees the rehearsals, so.
Sort of like get the lay of the land in the rehearsal, but, you know, yeah, save the the main take for the FEO when the camera's rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I would always prefer to shoot the rehearsal anyway, because you never know what's going to happen, and if it's no good, you just do it again. You know, which is the beauty of filming. So
yeah, if I have to do a rehearsal for camera, I nowadays would get the actors just to say numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so that we don't lose the magic of the first take. Because the first take is, our job is to hunt the magic. That's what Mark and I, we're doing. We're hunting the magic. And so you don't want a chance that the magic is going to go before you're able to shoot it. So if the rehearsal for camera, don't get the actors to do the lines. That would be my policy. And shoot the rehearsal.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a fine note to end on. But no, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you two. This was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed the film, and I wish you both all the best for the anniversary screening on Monday. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to my chat with Marc and Paul. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast if you enjoyed that, and also to click the bell icon as well so you don't miss an episode. And stay tuned for more exciting interviews and guests coming soon on Half the Picture.